Hello, folks. Assalamu alaikum. This is Azadeen Hawam, the founder of SADAA-Echoes. I'm so honored to be with you this afternoon and with a special guest with us to navigate and talk about stories that unite us. Welcome to another episode of Unbounded Stories, a space where we explore the stories, experiences, and ideas that help us understand better what it means to be a neighbor. Those stories help us understand who we are and how we can support each other throughout our stories and shared narratives. At SATA Echoes, we believe stories have the power to transform how we see ourselves and each other. Through the creation of Unbounded Stories, SADAA-Echoes work to bring people together, and we ask the big question, what is your story? Today, we are very honored to welcome my dear friend, sister Christine Enns, the Executive Director of Mediation Services of Winnipeg in Manitoba. Christine, very welcome here.
Thank you so much, Azadeen.
Christine is my friend, sister, colleague, somebody who I turn to and I ask a lot of questions to, and has been instrumental in helping me navigate many things here in the city of Winnipeg, but also somebody who's often and always there to listen and just sit with me in the discomfort. Christine has dedicated much of her career to fostering dialogue, strengthening relationships, and advancing narratives and making sure that conflict resolution is understood through community and with community. Christine, as the leader of Mediation Services, also supports individuals, families, community members in navigating conflict through understanding, accountability, and meaningful conversation. Very welcome here again, Christine. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do here at Mediation Services? Tell us a little bit about Mediation Services for those who may not know this building.
Sure. So, Mediation Services is a special place. We were started back in 1979 by a group of volunteers who were concerned about the number of people going into incarceration and then the folks that were left sort of unaddressed in the terms of the ones who experienced harm. So that group of volunteers eventually got some support through the Mennonite Central Committee and established an organization, a formal organization. But that connection to people who did harm and are incarcerated, people who are charged with offenses, and connecting them with the harm that they did and the impact of that harm is still a core piece of what we do here today. So we call that now our restorative justice diversion program. We also work with families and community, as you mentioned, who are both navigating separation and divorce, but also the relationships that come in families where siblings are in conflict over care of elderly parents, or youth maybe who are having challenging relationships with parents. We do try to support difficult conversations that way. And then we have a social enterprise at Mediation Services where we teach people the tools and the skills, the schools, I almost said, to navigate conflict in an effective way.
So you've been in Winnipeg for a long time, Christine. What year did Mediation Service start? When was it established?
We were established in 1979.
Okay, it's been a long time here.
Yeah.
Same location here on Portage?
We've been in various locations. Some people will be familiar with us on Ellis. I think there was the Community Dispute Center that we amalgamated with in the 90s was down Wall Street, I believe. But we've been here in this location on Portage Avenue for, I think, almost 20 years.
And SADAA-Echoes had the privilege of walking with you on many fronts and many journeys, including storytelling initiatives. The Unbounded series was founded to explore how our life experiences shape who we become. So, looking back at your journey here as a leader in the mediation services, can you share a story or an experience that influenced your understanding of conflict and inspired your commitment to mediation and restorative practice?
Yeah, I've reflected on this when you asked me to question, the story that immediately came to mind was formative years in my high school era, let's call it. So that takes us back to the early 90s. Um, David Milgaard was a man from Winnipeg who had been incarcerated for the death of for a murder. And in the 90s, his mother had um, rallied for a stay of proceedings because of a wrongful conviction. I'm not sure if I'm using exactly the right terminology, but the whole thing was about a wrongful conviction. She lobbied tirelessly for her son. And this was often in the news. There was books written about it, and eventually that case was overturned and he was released from prison. That was absolutely a formative um, news item, like one of those things that when you look on your life story, like how did I choose a path or what, like, and I don't think I knew consciously at that time, but I can definitely look back and see this was an important part of my understanding of social justice and about this understanding that um, what I know now to be true, which is that people actually they want to be good. They want to make good choices. They want to, and there is like something about a redemptive quality about this story. So it was proven that he was not guilty, and he was released. And then in the 90s, I went to Canadian Mennonite Bible College, which is now known as Canadian Mennonite University. And part of what I did there, there's a requirement for a practicum, and my practicum was prison visitation. So together with my good friend John, we went out once a month to Stony Mountain Institution and we visited one man over those 8 months or so. Um, so that was through an open circle program. And that experience of like driving out to Stony Mountain, parking up on the hill, going through the security checks, and then the conversations that we had in prison, and that kind of learning and that observing of what was happening around me was again like foundational and formational in I think who I am, how I see the world, how I think about things. Um, where we all make bad decisions from time to time. Some bad decisions become more serious than other bad decisions, and uh, and we're all human,
Mhm.
and we're all having a human experience on this earth, and uh, believing or this understanding about like what is actually happening in jails to transform, reform someone, like it's not a healthy place to be. It's cold and dark and lacks humanity. And I felt like in those visits, I could bring a little bit of humanity to that one person that I connected with. We would talk about life and we would talk about sort of what was happening, and but he was also very interested in like what does life look like on the outside? What are you and your friend John like? What do you do for fun? How like let me live through you in some ways too, right? And alongside that time in my life, I was at college and I was learning things, and I took a course on Indigenous studies. It was called Native Studies at that time. Um, but these things were sort of layering on top of each other, this understanding that there's like a real concern about overpopulation of Indigenous people in jails. And why is that? And keep in mind, like, this is all before Truth and Reconciliation Commission and calls to action. This was, um, for me, I think, laying that foundation of understanding that people's stories and their intergenerational trauma and all of those things, like, they matter in who we are becoming. Um, so I mean, life is interesting, right? But I would say though,
Yeah.
and my path hasn't been a straight line from there till here. There's been lots of different things that have um influenced me since then, but I would say those are the pieces that come to mind when I think about how did I get here, you know?
Yeah, and I can relate to so many things you've said. And I think what strikes me the most is the beauty of the zigzagging, and the uniqueness and the resiliency we develop as we take turns along the way. I guess for me, I would wonder then, how did you bring all those experiences here to mediation services? And of course, over the years, I'm sure you brought some, you left some, you changed some.
Right.
Um, and like, there's so many things we can dive into just from those stories. But I'm wondering, how do those visits, the questions that this prisoner asked about the outside world, intergenerational trauma and how our bodies carry it, all of those things, your commitment to social justice through your studies, how did they come into the building that you are now running?
Right. I think that's a tricky question. Is it even like uh I think what has happened for me in coming to mediation services, and I've been here now almost 9 years. Um, to me, I felt like coming here, I was called, and not I'm yeah, not I want to be careful what I say, but I did feel like there was sort of this pull of mediation services needs a leader at this time with these types of skills. And so, though I wasn't trained formally in conflict resolution or restorative justice, I had the DNA of social justice, and then learning about the things that we teach here around everybody is the author of their own story, right? And we are experts in our own lives. And I sometimes tell people, like at mediation services, we live in this gray area that not everything gets exactly the same treatment because we do look at context and the full sort of try to get a fuller picture of someone's story before we're looking at writing agreements or that sort of thing. So coming to mediation services, it felt like I was getting the theory and the background to define what it is about what I believe. And so I remember clearly in my interview, I was asked, how do you define restorative justice? And I totally screwed up my answer. I didn't answer clearly. I wasn't academic. I was like, I said things like, well, it's about treating people the way we want to be treated. It wasn't a strong answer at all. And I'm so grateful that they didn't judge me just by that one answer, because now I could answer it much more clearly, I think, I hope. Um, but it did like the learning that I have done since I've been here has really helped put context around um, context and like a frame, words around what it is that I believe to be true. That everybody has a story, and that our context and the way and the places that we've been raised and the way we've been parented and the attachments that we have and the communities that we are belonging to, all of these things matter in how we move through the world.
Yeah, I appreciate those. And I don't know, I mean, I come from both world, the story world and the academic world, and I would take the story world over the academic world anything. That's nothing new about me, and people know that. But for me, I think that's a beautiful answer you've given. I mean, my grandmother always talked about listening from the heart. I think that's where restorative justice begins, when you start to listen to somebody from your heart, trying to understand how your story and theirs intersect.
Mhm.
So I guess your work has evolved and continues to evolve. I come from similar worlds, Christine. I have a PhD in peace and conflict studies. Often the work I do academically or through SADAA-Echoes revolves around conflict. And many people think conflict is something to be avoided. So through your work, you've seen conflict from many different perspectives. What stories have taught you that conflict can also become an opportunity for growth?
Yeah, the thing about conflict is you're absolutely right. Like so many people think about conflict and they think it's something to be avoided. Um, there's a there's a beautiful quote that I found on Instagram from a person named Julian Turecki. Jillian. I think Jillian is a woman. She says people avoid uncomfortable conversations to keep the peace, but peace isn't the goal of a relationship. Love is. Isn't that brilliant? And we have the hard conversations in service of that love.
Mm.
So if I make this a little more personal, I think about the way that I was raised. Definitely conflict with my brothers was normal, especially my brother Steve, who's closest in age to me. We fought all the time. Like both we were nasty to each other and what we said to each other, but we also like physically like punched each other and it was yeah, we weren't friendly really. Um but with my parents, I never saw my parents fight. I never heard them fight. I didn't know that parents didn't just always get along until I got married. Like it's uh shocking, maybe. Like so I since talked to my mom and dad about that, like what and of course my dad said, well, that's because we always just got along. And my mom was like, um, so now I realize how important it is to have those hard conversations. And that creating some, like offering up some vulnerability is actually the way that you can build compassion and understanding. Um, so in my work, I'm not front and center with clients. I'm dealing with conflict and things with the staff team and having disagreements or navigating things that way. Um, and I, some people are very comfortable with vulnerability and other people are not comfortable at all. And I can say, like, as a leader, as a manager, um, if I know that you're sick because your child, has a virus and that's why you need to be at home and use a sick day, like my compassion and understanding increases, right? I have a different way of understanding what's happening for you because you've shared something with me that is, you don't actually have to tell me why, but when you do, it creates more of that for me. And that's where I think the love part comes in. That's where the power of um, engaging in a hard conversation, because maybe it's hard for you to tell me that your kid is sick again or something. Or whatever that case might be. We have people who have like participants in our programs who have actually said in the room, I remember one case was a brother, I think there was an assault, had been charged against assaulting their other brother. And we brought them together for a mediation and had a really important conversation about what had been going on and what the intent was. And they could reflect at the end of the conversation that they've never spoken to each other the way they spoke in that facilitated conversation, that very intentional dialogue, and how meaningful that had been for their relationship. So, absolutely, like the stories of transformation happen here, and it's not always um, like bouquets of flowers and gratitude. It's not easy work, But when people are open to a process and have been and are prepared to engage and prepared to shift, I think that's also what we learn here is that conflict is never, it's never just about one person. Like there's multiple layers and different facets of what's brought people into that pinch or crunch
Mhm.
moment. Um, yeah. Did I get to
Yeah,
your?
I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. And I think I reflect with you on those things. I mean, I exist in many spaces, including the education space,
Mhm.
education settings, and so on. And I think I see that sometimes people get to a place of I call it the comfortable, the comfortable discomfortable, where you got into a disagreement with your colleague or your friend or so on, instead of using that discomfort, that conflict to reflect and to see the core causes. What I've witnessed sometimes people just leave it be the way it is, status quo, and people now exist in this get along kind of thing situation in which those things are still there. Um, you may have dealt briefly with the symptoms, but the causes are still there, and you haven't actually sat down in conversations about the causes, and therefore, the relationship hasn't yet continued, been given a chance to heal.
Right.
So, in closing, as we come to a close here, as I reflect on the outside world, Christine, we're watching so many things around us being, they're changing, continue to change. Polarization is something we live with on a daily basis now. Politicians, leaders, and so on, who out publicly state policies and politics of division. What can you, as a leader here of mediation service, tell Winnipeg?
Mm. I think one of the most important skills that we aspire to is shifting our judgment to curiosity. So when it comes to polarities and polarization, I think that means imagining what else might be true. What information does the other side have that I don't, or where are they getting their information from? How do I be curious about that? Um, I would say the knowing that the only thing I have control over is my own reaction and how I'm thinking about things and what the storyline is in my head. So can I be generous with that? Can I be curious about it? Because the storyline that I have in my head might not be true. Um, so what would I tell Winnipeggers? I mean, it is a difficult time. People are facing unprecedented pressures, whether it is like things from poverty and houselessness and addictions and external forces that are making strange decisions that don't make sense. If that isn't a reason to actually see more humanity in the other, like what are we even doing? So we have to look at each other with kindness and compassion. Um, and I think about the quote from Ram Dass, who was an American peace builder. And this has been coming up a lot for me lately, and so I'll share it with you here too. We are all just walking each other home.
Mm.
And that is true on so many levels. Like if I think about how I want to parent my child, I want to teach her a good way and I want to walk alongside her and walk her home, right? I want her to know where home is and I want her to know where she's come from. Um, when I think about the team that I lead here, uh, if I imagine how do I lead with kindness and compassion is to think, well, I'm walking them home. Um, I think about the conversations you and I have had, like home for you is Palestine. How do I support you in walking home? Like metaphorically,
Yes,
physically,
yeah.
right? Um, so if we saw the world through that lens, all of us, I think we'd have a kinder and more loving community. And I think that's actually what it's all about.
Thank you, Christine. And I think while we walk people home, uh, I think it is important to also call them neighbors and know them. And I
Yes,
think it's important to share meals with them. And for
yes.
me, yes, Palestine is home, but also is Winnipeg. So is Winnipeg. I sometimes in Palestine I want to back I want to walk back to Winnipeg because I miss Winnipeg because it's also part of me now, and I hold it and I carry it with me everywhere.
Yeah, that's a perfect addition. Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. Folks, as we gather stories from different communities and experiences, we are reminded that peace is not simply the absence of conflict, but the presence of relationships, understandings, and the courage to listen. The best thing that happened to me because of SADAA-Echoes is I started to listen from my heart.
Mm.
I started to know my story in ways I never thought I would know. And thank you to everyone who joined our Unbounded Story series and shared their stories with us today. Thank you so much, Christine, for being with us, for joining our conversations, and for sharing your heart with us. Folks, please follow us at SADAA.Echoes. Keep asking, what is your story? Shukran.